My boss turned me into her unpaid personal driver after I bought a car and called me for coffee stops, dry cleaning, her kid, and weekend weddings. So the last ride I gave her was to the HR office. I work at a mid-sized firm downtown. I had been there almost 2 years before I saved up enough to buy my first used car. Up until then, I took the bus and train, like most people in our office. The morning I parked in the company garage for the first time, my boss, a woman named Patrice, saw it through the break room window. Patrice did not have a car. She had never had a car. She had been using ride shares for years and complaining about it the entire time. She came to my desk that afternoon and asked, very sweetly, if I would mind giving her a ride home since it was on my way. I said sure, because it was on my way, and because she was my boss. I did not realize that was the last time she was going to ask sweetly. The next morning, she came over to my desk first thing and told me what time she needed to be picked up the following day, because she had assumed I was now driving her in as well. I had not offered. I said, okay. The morning after that, she texted me at 6:30 to swing by a coffee shop near her house so she could grab her usual on the way. The morning after that, she texted me at 6:15 to remind me to actually leave by 7 because traffic was bad. By the end of that first week, she had a standing pickup time, a standing coffee stop, and a standing assumption that I would drive her home every night regardless of whether I had plans or errands. It got bigger from there. After a month, she was asking me to stop at the dry cleaner on the way home so she could pick up her shirts. After 2 months, she started asking me to stop at the grocery store so she could grab a few things while I waited in the car. After 3 months, she was asking me to pick her son up from his after-school program 2 days a week, even though I had told her plainly that I was not comfortable transporting somebody else's child. After 4 months, she was asking me to drive her to weekend events, birthday parties, a bachelorette brunch, a wedding 2 hours out of town. She asked me to do these things in a voice that was not really a question. She never offered gas money. I asked her once, very politely, if she could put $20 in for fuel since we were driving so much. She told me, with a small laugh, that gas was a fixed cost, and I would be paying for it anyway, whether she was in the car or not. She rode in the back seat. She did not ask first. She just opened the back door every morning, set her bag on the seat next to her, and scrolled on her phone. She told me the heat was too high. She told me the music was too loud. She told me once that the car smelled like fast food and that I should take it through a cleaning at some point this weekend. She started leaving things in the back seat, a sweater, a pair of shoes, a bag from a bakery. She would call me on Saturdays to ask if I could bring her sweater by because she needed it for an event that night. Twice she sent her sister Sydney to my car in the company garage to grab something while I was at my desk. The second time, the door was unlocked because Patrice had told me the week before to leave it that way in case she needed to get in. People in the office started to notice. One of the senior people on our floor, a man named Preston, asked me very gently one morning whether I was being paid extra for any of this. I told him honestly that I was not. He raised his eyebrows and did not say anything else. I assumed he was just being polite. 8 months in, Patrice did the thing that ended it. There was a quarterly meeting with her director Eleanor, who was 2 levels above Patrice. I had been invited because Eleanor wanted to hear directly from a few people about a process change. I had spent 2 weeks preparing for it. Patrice had been told about it weeks in advance. That morning, Patrice came to my desk at 9:45, 15 minutes before the meeting, and told me she needed me to take her to a nail appointment from 10 to 11:30. I told her very calmly that I had the meeting with Eleanor at 10. Patrice told me she would let Eleanor know I was running an errand for her and that Eleanor would understand. She told me to grab my keys. I told her I was going to the meeting. She told me very calmly that she was my boss, and this was not really up for discussion. I went to the meeting. I sat down in Eleanor's conference room at 10 o'clock. Patrice was not there. Eleanor asked me where she was. I told her honestly that Patrice had a nail appointment and had asked me to drive her there instead of attending. Preston was in that room. Before Eleanor could react, he told her he had been wondering for months whether anything was being done about the arrangement because half the office had noticed and nobody knew who to tell. Eleanor asked me 3 questions in a row, very calmly. How long it had been going on, whether Patrice had ever compensated me, whether I had ever felt like I could say no. I answered all 3 honestly. After the meeting, Eleanor told me she would be looking into it and asked me to document everything I could remember. That night, I sat at my kitchen table and typed out 8 months of pickups, coffee stops, dry cleaning runs, grocery waits, the time I drove to a wedding 2 hours away, and the days she had me picking up Andre. I went back through my calendar and my text messages and matched every request to a date. I wrote down the time she texted me, what she asked for, and whether I had something I had to cancel or rearrange. The dentist appointment I pushed back in month 2 because she needed a grocery run. The Saturday in month 4, I was supposed to meet a friend for lunch, but Patrice called me at 7 in the morning about her sweater. The Sunday I drove 2 hours to a wedding, sat in a parking lot, and drove 2 hours back for a woman who had never once offered gas money. Not once. Not a single time in 8 months. I put all of it in order, typed it clean, and saved it. The next morning I woke up early, drove to work, and sent the whole document to Eleanor's email before 7:45. Patrice usually got in around 9. I wanted Eleanor to have everything in her hands before Patrice even walked through the door. Then at 9:15, Patrice came in the same way she always did. Bag on her shoulder, coffee in hand, not a single thing about her suggesting she had missed a major meeting with her director the day before. She walked right over to my desk, leaned against the partition, and said she had a dentist appointment at noon, and could I take her? Not far, maybe 15 minutes. She said it exactly the way she had said everything for 8 months. Casual, easy, like she was asking me to pass her a pen. I looked at her and said, no. She paused. She tilted her head a little to the side, the way someone does when they hear something that does not make sense to them. What do you mean? No, she said. I kept my voice steady. I mean, I'm not driving you. You need to figure something else out. She stood there looking at me like I had spoken a different language. Then she turned and walked away without saying a single word. She did not slam anything. She did not raise her voice. She just left. And honestly, that was almost worse than if she had yelled, because it meant she was thinking, and Patrice thinking was never a good thing for the person she was thinking about. About an hour later, the receptionist, Amy Faith, fell into step beside me in the hallway and kept her voice low. She told me she had never seen Patrice's face look like that when she walked away from my desk. I stopped and asked her directly, if Eleanor or someone from the company asked her about the past few months, the rides, the errands, all of it, would she be willing to say what she had seen? Amy Faith looked at the floor for a second. Then she said, if someone actually asks me, I'll tell the truth. She said it like a fact, not a drama. That was enough. At lunch, Preston found me in the break room. He told me Eleanor had called him in that morning and asked him to put what he said in the meeting in writing. He had done it. Then he said 2 other people on the floor had separately told him they saw Sydney going into my car in the company garage. People had been watching the whole time. They saw me leaving early to pick up Andre. They saw Patrice climbing into my back seat every morning like I was running a car service. They just did not know what to do about it, the same way I had not known what to do about it for most of that time. The day before the formal review meeting, I was at my desk when my phone buzzed with a text from a number I did not recognize. You need to drop this. You have no idea what you're doing to my sister. She has a son to take care of. I did not not need a name to know it was Sydney, the same woman who had walked into the company garage and gone through my car twice without asking me. And now she was texting me from a number I had never been given, holding Andre up like a shield to make everything Patrice had done disappear. I did not respond. I took a screenshot, attached it to an email, and sent it to Eleanor with a short note explaining who I believed the sender was. Eleanor responded in under 10 minutes. Do not engage. I'm adding this to the file. That was it. Clean and direct. Sydney's message was not going to guilt me into dropping anything. It was going to become one more page in a folder that was getting thicker by the hour. About an hour after that, Patrice appeared at my desk holding 2 cups of coffee. 2 full days of silence since I had told her no about the dentist appointment, and now here she was like nothing had happened. She set one of the cups down next to my keyboard and kept the other in her hand. Too calm. The kind of calm a person puts on like a coat when they are trying hard to look like they are not falling apart underneath. She smiled and said, "No hard feelings, right? I got you one too." I looked at the coffee. Same order she used to have me pick up every morning. Same cup, same chain, bought herself this time. Like that was supposed to reset 8 months. I did not touch it. I looked at her and said, "Patrice, you were told not to contact me about this." She tilted her head and kept the smile where it was. "I'm not contacting you about anything. I'm bringing my coworker a coffee. Is that a problem now too?" She held the smile for one more second, then turned and walked back to her office. I opened a blank document, typed the time, the date, and exactly what she had said word for word, copied it into an email, and sent it to Eleanor. I did not add any commentary. I just gave Eleanor the facts and let the facts do the talking. Then I picked up the coffee and dropped it in the trash. The morning of the review, I was walking through the company garage toward the elevator when I heard her voice behind me, smaller than I had ever heard it, shaky. I turned around and Patrice was standing about 10 feet from the back of my car. Her coat was open, her bag hanging off one shoulder like she had thrown it on in a rush, and her face was wet. She was crying, not making a scene, just standing there with tears running down her face and her hands half raised like she did not know what to do with them. "Can we just talk for a second?" she said. "Please, just you and me." I stood there in the middle of the garage with the overhead lights buzzing above us and the smell of concrete all around. I told her Eleanor had advised me not to discuss the situation with her. Patrice wiped her eyes with the back of her hand and shook her head. "I'm not talking about the situation. I'm talking about us. I thought we were friends. I thought you were doing those things because you cared." She said it like she believed it, like she had spent the night telling herself that version of the story and had come down to the garage fully committed to it. I knew what this was. It was not friendship. It was control in a different outfit. So I told her the truth. "Patrice, I was doing those things because you're my boss, and I didn't know how to say no." She shook her head faster. "You could have said no at any time." I let a beat pass. Then I said, "I did say no about Andre. You asked me to pick up your son anyway." She opened her mouth. Nothing came out. She just stood there, mouth half open, eyes still wet, and for the first time in 8 months, she did not have a redirect or a joke or a way to make it sound like I was the difficult one. I told her I had to go. I walked past her toward the elevator and could feel her watching me the whole way. The doors opened right away. I stepped in alone. My hands were shaking. Not because I was scared of her, because for about 3 seconds back there, she had almost gotten to me. She almost made me feel guilty for not wanting to be her free ride anymore. That is what she was good at, making you feel like her problems were your responsibility and your limits were an insult. But by the time the elevator hit my floor, I remembered the grocery store parking lot and the wedding parking lot and the Saturday morning sweater call and 2 hours of highway each way for a woman who had never once offered to put gas in my tank. The guilt did not stand a chance against all of that. At 10 o'clock, I walked into the formal HR meeting. The representative was already seated with my printed timeline, Preston's written statement, and Eleanor's notes stacked on the table. The representative told me this was a formal fact-finding conversation, and everything I said would be documented. Then asked me to walk through the history from the beginning, so I did. I started with the afternoon Patrice saw my car through the break room window. I talked through the first ride home, the standing pickup time, the coffee stop, the dry cleaning, the grocery store, the weekend events, the 2-hour wedding drive, Sydney going through my car in the garage, the Saturday morning sweater call, the morning she tried to pull me from Eleanor's quarterly meeting to drive her to a nail appointment. I did not rush any of it. I did not get loud or emotional. I just told it straight, one thing after the other, the way it happened. When I finished, the representative asked me one more question. At any point during those 8 months, when Patrice made one of her requests, did I feel like my job was at risk if I refused? I did not need to think about it. Every single time, I said. The representative wrote that down. At the end of the meeting, the representative told me Patrice had denied several of the claims. Her position was that the driving was, and these were her exact words, a mutual arrangement between colleagues. I almost laughed. I did not, but I came close, because the sound those words made in that room was so far from the reality of what had happened that it felt like a joke. I let the words sit there for a second. Then I said, "She rode in my back seat and told me my car smelled like fast food." The representative picked up a pen and wrote that down too. I walked into the conference room at 1:30 for the formal review. Eleanor was already seated. The HR representative was there with the laptop and the folder. Next to the representative sat someone from the company's employee relations team. 3 people on one side of the table, Patrice's chair empty across from them, and one chair beside it where they gestured for me to sit. The representative asked me to present my documentation. I reached into my bag and pulled out the flash drive with the full exported text thread. The representative plugged it in, turned the screen so everyone could see, and opened the messages. The room went quiet. Not the kind of quiet where people are waiting for someone to talk. The kind where nobody is breathing too loud because what they are looking at is doing all the talking for them. Message after message after message. Patrice telling me what time to be at her place, which coffee shop to stop at, to pick up her dry cleaning, to grab Andre, to leave the backseat clear, not to be late. The representative kept scrolling and nobody in the room said a word. It was all one direction. Every message started with Patrice. Every instruction came from Patrice. Every timestamp, every demand, every order. And then there was me. My responses, when I even gave them, were 1 or 2 words. "Okay, got it. On my way." That was my entire side of 8 months of messages. The representative stopped scrolling somewhere around month 5 and looked up from the screen. "There's not one message here where you offered," the representative said. I shook my head. "No," I said, "there isn't." At 2 o'clock, the door opened and Patrice walked in. Nice blazer, pressed pants, hair done, chin up, shoulders back, like she was about to lead a meeting rather than sit through one about herself. She pulled out the chair across from Eleanor, set her bag on the floor, folded her hands on the table, and did not look at me. Not a glance. Eleanor asked her to describe the driving arrangement between her and her direct report. Patrice nodded like she had practiced the answer. "It was casual. He offered. I accepted. Colleagues do things for each other." Eleanor said, "He offered every single morning for 8 months?" Patrice did not miss a beat. "He never said he didn't want to." Eleanor turned the laptop screen to face Patrice directly and pointed to a message from around month 3. "Be at my place by 7:15. Don't forget to stop at the coffee place. And leave your backseat clear. Sydney might need to grab something later." later. Eleanor let her read it, then said, "Does this look like a mutual arrangement to you?" The room went very still. I could hear the air coming through the vent above the table. Patrice's face changed piece by piece, like a mask slipping from the edges. Her hands, folded neatly on the table, pressed together harder. She said, "That's just how I talk. I'm direct. That doesn't mean I was forcing him." Her voice was still controlled, but thinner now, like she was having to work harder to keep it steady. The representative scrolled to another message and read it aloud. "Pick up Andre at 4 from his after-school program. He knows your car." Then looked up at Patrice. "You had a subordinate transporting your minor child on a regular basis without any formal agreement, compensation, or liability coverage." Not a question, a statement. It sat in the middle of that table like a brick. Patrice opened her mouth. Nothing came out. She just sat there with her eyes moving between the representative and the screen, looking for somewhere safe to land and not finding one. Preston's written statement was read next. The part where he asked me weeks earlier if I was being paid extra for the driving. The part where I said no. The part where he described seeing Sydney walking through the company garage and getting into my car on 2 separate occasions. Each detail landed like another weight on a scale that had already tipped. Patrice sat through all of it. She did not interrupt. She did not try to explain. She just sat with her hands pressed together on the table while her own words and choices were laid out in front of her one by one. Eleanor leaned forward and told Patrice that what had been documented in the timeline, the text messages, and the written statements constituted a clear pattern of misusing supervisory authority for personal benefit. The company took this seriously, especially when it involved a power dynamic between a manager and a direct report. She said those words slowly, power dynamic, like she wanted Patrice to understand this was not about coffee stops or dry cleaning anymore. Then Eleanor asked if Patrice had anything to add. The room went quiet. Patrice sat still for a long moment. Then for the first time since she had walked in, she looked at me. Her eyes were wet, not crying yet, but close. Her voice cracked when she spoke. "I gave you opportunities. I included you in my life, and this is what you do?" She said it like I had betrayed her. Like 8 months of driving her everywhere, picking up her son, waiting in parking lots, giving up my Saturdays, leaving my car unlocked so her sister could go through it, like all of that was a gift she had given me, and I had thrown it back in her face. I looked at her. I did not raise my voice. I did not lean forward or do anything that would make this about anger. I just said it quiet and clear. "You didn't include me in your life, Patrice. You included me in your errands." She looked away from me and back down at the table. Eleanor told her that effective immediately she was being placed on administrative leave pending a full review, that her supervisory responsibilities were being reassigned, and that any further contact with me, directly or through family members, would be treated as retaliation and handled accordingly. She said all of it in a steady, professional voice, the same way someone reads terms that are not up for debate. Patrice sat there for another moment. Then she reached down, picked up her bag, stood up, and walked to the door without looking at me or Eleanor or anyone else. The door closed behind her with a soft click, and she was gone. Eleanor turned to me, and her voice was softer. "Thank you for coming forward. This should have been addressed a long time ago." I thanked her and the representative and walked out. The hallway was empty. I passed the break room, past the glass partition, past Patrice's office. Her door was open. The light was off. I sat down at my desk and set my bag on the floor and opened my laptop. There was nothing urgent, nothing from Patrice. I pulled out my phone and set it next to my keyboard. The screen was dark. No texts, no pickup times, no coffee orders, no be here by 7:15. No, don't forget the dry cleaning. No, grab Andre at 4. Nothing. I looked at the clock in the corner of my screen. It was 2:47 on a Tuesday afternoon, and for the first time in 8 months, nobody needed a ride.